Welcome back, everyone. In this video I show you a little project that I made a few weeks ago for my wife, and it's a donut wall because we celebrated my wife's birthday a few weeks ago, and she asked me to make a donut wall for her for the party because she really likes that. And she showed me a few ideas that she found on the internet, and eventually we decided to go with a design that looks more like a repurposed palette or so. And before I started the project, I gave a few thoughts about the material. It's not necessarily that I did not want to spend the money on new material for it, but also I thought, well, I know that's a cool project, but we might never use this donut wall again, or maybe only in a few years when the kids are old enough to, when we have bigger birthday parties for them. But still, it would be something that would be most of the time would sit around somewhere, or maybe we would give it away or put into trash or whatever. So I said to myself, well, let's just use some material, some leftovers that I have. And I decided to grab an old piece of plywood that I found, and here you can see me that I grabbed an old piece that used to be a bench that I made a few weeks ago, and I already took the bench apart, but I always kept the seat, the top of the bench. And I think I always wanted to reuse the top of the bench, but well, it was a shorter bench. It was for a customer, and the customer gave it back eventually because she said it's not strong enough or whatever. Different story. But I like I said, I kept the table, kept the bench top because I always wanted to make something else out of it, but it just never happened. So when I was looking for some material, I just saw that piece, and I thought, oh, let's just rip it apart and use it for that donut wall. But before I could use it, I had to remove some screws, and now I also, after I rip it down, I have to remove the leftovers from the sliding dovetail that I once put in there to keep the board straight. And well, I have to say, even after a few years that it was sitting now in my shop, the top was still pretty straight. And this, I just want to point this out to show an example of how good a sliding dovetail works. In the past, when I made lots of customer projects, most of them, I think most pieces that I made were always benches, and for almost every single bench I used a sliding dovetail because it's an older method, but I think it's still the best method to keep even a wider board straight. I just wanted to show you this. So here we are. We have almost all the parts ready. It's I have to say, this whole project was a multi-day project. Not necessarily because it was complicated, but at this time I had a lot of other things going around. So it took me, I think it took me over a week to make this. But if you have the time, you can probably do this in just a couple of hours, I think. So I think this is a 1/4-inch dowel. I think it's birch, and here I trim it down to yeah. I think it's in total. I think it's 24 pieces, and this will serve later to hold the donuts. And of course, you have to give a light sanding to everything. But this all the boards and all the material, I did not give it like a full sanding, especially not on the plywood, because it's a cheaper plywood, and you would have a hard time to get everything 100% flat. So I just round the edges a little bit to get rid of all the sharp edges. But that's it. And also we want to keep this whole thing a little bit more like in a rough shape, so that actually looks like a like an old and used pallet. And so I think a full sanding to whatever 220 grit or so wouldn't even serve this purpose. And of course, it makes my life a lot easier. And here I pre-drill the holes for the dowels, or more for the screws that hold the dowels in place. And I use this first board as a template to drill the holes on all the other boards. And here's something. So in this case, it might not be very important, but if you work on a cabinet or so, and you want to use a board as a template, make sure you always use the same board as a template, because we all know if you copy something from another board or so, and then you would use the second board as a template for the third board, and the third board as a template for the fourth board, you might lose a lot of accuracy. Or your holes might end up somewhere or a lot offset, and definitely not where you want it to have. So like I said, in this case, it was not that important, but just as a quick tip, always use one board as a template for everything. And here I prepare everything to get ready for staining. And other than on other projects that I did in the past, I stain everything before, and not when everything is built together. Not only because I think it's somehow easier to apply the stain, but it's also those little dowels that are made that will hold the donuts in place. They will not get stained, so it would be a lot more difficult to do this later with the dowels in place, and then trying to spare those dowels with the stain. So that's pretty much the main reason why I did the staining before. And of course, you want to make sure that you clean or you use a rag to wipe off all the stain that's left, so that you do not get a sticky surface later. But I think you guys all know this. Okay, and now we are ready to put those little dowels on. So this was a task that I didn't really like to do, because I had to hold the dowel with one hand and screw on the other side of the board with the other hand, because the dowels are very small, and if I don't know of any method to prevent those dowels from spinning around while I screw it on. So I had to basically hold it, but well, there's probably an easier way to do this. But at that time, I just had to do it this way. But yeah, like I said, there's probably an easier way to do this. Turn some of those dowels around a bit to make sure that they are, well, let's say I wanted to avoid that one of the dowels is looking a little bit up and the other dowel is pointing a bit down. So I just turned them around a bit to make sure that they are pretty much in line. And this whole thing does not necessarily need to be like 100% accurate. So I just used that little quick square here, this little construction square, to put everything in a right angle. And I do not really, or let's say I'm not the biggest fan of those quick squares or easy squares or whatever you want to call them, because in my experience they are not very accurate. But for this project here, it's good enough. I just used a few screws to put it together, and well, even I wanted to use black screws so that those screw heads are not that much visible. And I think even the screws that I use here are used from another project, and that is the reason why some of those screws are not in the best shape. So I literally had to throw a few screws out because they just look pretty bad. They were in a very bad condition. Let's make sure that this board is right in the middle. And again, it does not necessarily need to be like 100% accurate. And you can also see here, you might have noticed this already in other videos from me, that before I drill a hole, I always use this little tool here to make a little hole for on the surface of the board, and that's just for the drill, so the drill does not slip and leave some scratches on the board. Okay, and I think we are almost done. The only thing that is left now is that little sign on the top, and I show you this in just a second how I make this. Last few screws here, and you can see here how many screws I throw out because they are in such a bad condition. All right, that's so far for this wall, and here I make this little sign for the top, and unfortunately I'm not sure if I did not film it or maybe I just lost the footage of how I make this little sign here, how I cut it out, and it's just some leftover of 1/4-inch plywood that I cut out on the bandsaw, and then I use I pre-write it with just a pencil, and then I use some I think it's acrylic paint that was left over from another project. I think my wife just forgot that paint in my shop, and then I saw this and said, "Oh, let's use that paint to write the word on it." Usually I would leave this for my wife to do because she is so much better on doing this kind of work than I am, but she also had in this week so much to do, so I didn't ask her and I tried it by myself, and I think it does not look bad. I think it's okay. I just use a few nails to nail the sign on. Of course, that first nail broke. Let's use another one. Okay, so far so good. Now we can put the donuts on. And my daughter, she gets the first pick of the donut wall. So what do you guys think? If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up, write a comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.